Oh man, is that title going to annoy a whole bunch of Linux users? Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So yes, today we are going to be revisiting the FydeOS, the open source hackable Linux tablet that we explored not too long ago. For those who missed that video, this right here is a pretty high-end Linux tablet that ships with an operating system called FydeOS, which is actually a fork of Chromium OS, but you're totally able to put a whole bunch of other operating systems on, and the company that makes this thing actually encourages you to do so. They've got numerous guides on their website. And well, you read the title, so you know exactly where we're going today. Yes, we're going to be trying to put Windows 11 on this thing because that sounds like just a total productive use of my time. Now, some of you may be wondering why the heck I still have this tablet, because I was supposed to send it back to them after I made that first video. Well, the long and short of it is, Fyde seems to be kind of cool with me holding on to this thing for a little while longer, so I figured why not try and mess around with this thing and put Windows 11 on it, because that's something you really would never actually want to do. Windows 11 currently does not work properly on this thing. It's just going to be so much fun, more so for you guys than for me. But yeah, to get this project up and running, we're going to need a couple things. First off, a micro SD card, maybe in a full-size SD card adapter if your setup requires that. This we're going to copy over a firmware file to, and then we're going to need a good old-fashioned USB drive to put the Windows installer on. And then you just head over to the FydeOS wiki to follow along with the Windows on ARM setup guide. I'll have all of this linked down below. Yes, with the FydeOS having an ARM-based CPU, we gotta put Windows for ARM on it. x86 edition is obviously not going to work. And they do mention right here very clearly that this is in a developmental state, so not everything is going to work. In fact, these are the only things that do work. Everything but the unaccelerated display, the speakers, SD and eMMC, camera, and the Folio keyboard and touchpad do not work. And then tells you what you need down here, and the first thing you got to grab is the Windows image for ARM, which they do have this separate guide. It's actually not them, it's the WAR project, or Windows on R, which is for getting Windows on a single board computer like the Raspberry Pi, even though the FydeOS is not a single board computer, with it being an ARM-based device with a processor that this whole thing supports. We can follow along with this guide. And there's a couple ways you can download a Windows ARM64 image. I went ahead and used this UUP dump website. You can go here and choose all your options and download it, and I already went through that process. I've got the ISO downloaded, and they do mention right here that it says beware that builds newer than 22.621 are not guaranteed to work. That actually only pertains to the Raspberry Pi, because the FydeOS has a Rockchip CPU in it, and you can see up here it says all builds of Windows 11 can run on Rockchip RK3588 devices, so we're all good there. But yeah, we very well may come back to this in another video. I don't know, we'll see, because yeah, Windows on a Raspberry Pi sounds kind of like a fun time. Maybe more so for you guys than me, but so yeah, you got a couple ways of downloading this. Once you get the image, then you need to grab the UEFI firmware. I've also done this. You just go to this official repository, and this actually has a bunch of different images for various devices. You just want to grab the FydeOS one right here, and this is the image we're going to burn to, or write, I guess is a better way of saying it, to our micro SD card. So I'm going to be using Rufus here. We've got the SD card selected, and then we're just going to browse for the file, which I've got right here. And we are going to just click on start to write that to the SD card. And there we go, all done, simple as that. Now it tells you here to, take the SD card out, put it into the Fyde tab, and then, go through that whole process. But we're going to prepare the Windows on ARM USB here as well, since I have that plugged in. So we're going to go back to Rufus, choose our USB drive, and then browse for the ISO image here. We're just going to leave everything at the default, I guess. I mean, I did the same thing for the, for the SD card, right? It didn't say to change anything, to mess up any of those settings. So we're just going to do the same here. Click on start. And this is something I love about Rufus. I know I've mentioned this before in other videos, but when you write a Windows 11 install image to a drive, it will come up and say, hey, do you want to remove all the stupid stuff Microsoft requires now? You can get rid of the RAM requirement, secure boot in TPM 2.0, remove the requirement for an online Microsoft account, disable data collection, disable BitLocker, automatic device encryption. You can make a local account just automatically, which is great. So we're just going to, leave all of this because, I don't see why not. I don't think it'll hurt anything. And we will write to the USB. Now, the FydeTab Duo has a micro SD card slot, but what it doesn't have is a USB-A slot. So, of course, we're going to need a USB-C to USB-A dongle to get this thing working. Unfortunately, I've got one right here from today's video sponsor, Ugreen. They recently sent me their Revidock Thunderbolt 13-in-1 dock, and as somebody who uses a MacBook Pro daily to edit these videos, it has really decluttered my setup. Just by plugging this thing into the wall and using its single included Thunderbolt cable, you can connect it up to your laptop to vastly improve its port selection. It's got USB-C, USB-A, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, SD and micro SD slots, as well as a headphone jack. Oh, and it also charges your laptop at the same time with its included 180 watt GAN adapter. I currently use it with two HD displays, but you can connect dual 6K monitors or a single 8K monitor running at 60 Hz. Its Thunderbolt 5 ports allow you to quickly transfer large files at 120 gigabits per second, which takes just 7 seconds for a 21 gig file. And the design is absolutely beautiful. It blends in really well on my desk right next to my MacBook, and the front and side ports are super convenient for plugging in an SD card or USB drive. But it also doubles as a central charging hub for your laptop, phone, and just about everything in between. Right now, you can get 25% off your purchase of one of these docks just by clicking the link down below. So be sure to check it out, and huge thanks again to Ugreen for making this video possible. So we're going to start with the micro SD card with that firmware file on it. And what's interesting is the slot is actually a combo slot that is also where you would put a nano SIM card in if you were going to, install the LTE module in this thing. So we're going to pull this out here. And what's kind of odd is the guide tells us just to put in the micro SD card into the slot, but just have it protruding a little bit so you can still grab it. But the little tray here, you see there's two slots on it. This is where the nano SIM card would go, and this is where the micro SD cards would go. And you can see, if we were to jam the SD card in there, it would, go in there and probably get stuck. I feel like it has to go in a little bit further, so we're probably just going to use this, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe there's a reason they tell us just to put it in directly and leave it protruding a little bit. But let's just see, first of all, if we can go into files and see if it recognizes anything here, which it doesn't look like it does. It would show a separate drive here on the left side, but it tells us just to power on your device and it should boot directly into the UEFI firmware. So let's just try to do a power off here, and we'll go ahead and try to power it back on. And yeah, it looks like it's just booting right into FydeOS. Yeah, okay, so I don't really think this is gonna work. So let me just go ahead, and maybe this guide is a little bit older, because, this definitely is made for a micro SD card. So we're just gonna put it in there like that. And I don't think this actually flashes anything on the FydeTab Duo. I think this is just so we can boot into, a BIOS to then choose the USB drive to boot from, is kind of what it sounds like. But let's just see what it does here. It already looks like it's booting right back into FydeOS. Okay. Okay, so I figured it out. This might make me look kind of dumb, but in my defense, the guide did not mention anything about using the SD card bracket. It just said insert the micro SD card into the slot. I found out from this post on the community forums, somebody was mentioning that, to have it boot off the SD card with the UEFI firmware, you have to leave the bracket slightly protruding, which is what I've done here, and that's how you actually get it to boot. So what they mean by slightly protruding is you just literally put it in, all the way in, and then just eject it with a paper clip, and where it pops out to is where you want it to be. So now that we've done this, I can go ahead and turn it on, and it will boot into the firmware. So you see we have a different startup screen here. Now, I don't have the USB drive inserted yet, but at this point is where we would be able to choose that. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. It's probably going to take a reboot to recognize this, although there might be just if we go to boot manager and then choose, yeah, I think we're going to have to just restart because I don't see, well, maybe one of these, those are eMMC, and then we have the SD card at the bottom. So let me just go ahead and power it off. So now we've got the USB drive in, we are starting up, and gosh, these options down here are kind of hard to read just from where I'm sitting. You see the screen is so small. But, okay, so we can go back to boot manager. There's also device manager, but boot manager here, we've got UEFI shell. We have those exact same options here. I mean, let's just, it all just says generic eMMC. I don't know, let's try boot 1. No, they didn't do anything. Yeah, like, that's not it. Okay, well, I am pleased to say that I figured this out, at least getting the Windows installer to boot. We'll see if we run into any more problems later on in the video. But the long and short of it is, I had to use an entirely different USB hub. This one right here, although it has this like powered USB port, you know, for plugging in power to it, I think all that was doing was passing power, you know, to the device that it was plugged into. It wasn't actually powering any of these USB ports. Whereas this one here that you guys have probably seen from some of my other videos, this is an old-fashioned USB 2.0 powered hub. You plug this into the wall, it powers these USB ports, and then, of course, we still need an adapter to plug it into the Fide tab here. So, if we go ahead and plug that in, and I also am going to plug in a USB keyboard and mouse, because when we boot into the Windows installer, the Fide tab's case, you know, the keyboard and trackpad case, does not work. But I'm assuming it's going to work once we get Windows installed, because the guide, well, says that it will. So we've got a keyboard here plugged in, and let me just plug this mouse in to the powered hub, and we'll move all these cables out of the way. And we'll go down to just reset. And here we get this UEFI NTFS bootloader, and it's currently starting the Windows boot manager. You may have noticed that I was using a different USB drive. I've got this blue one plugged in. I was trying, you know, a handful of different drives just in case that was screwing something up. You know, I was using a USB 3.0 one. I thought maybe a USB 2.0 one might work, but that doesn't really seem to have anything to do with it from what I can tell. However, what you're going to see here in a moment, you might have been able to tell from that boot wheel how it was kind of all over the place. Yeah, the display doesn't actually display anything properly. I can like move this window around. I've got multiple mouse cursors showing up. There's, yeah, all this nonsense going on. And also it is, you know, in the portrait orientation instead of landscape. However, I was able to find a solution to this, and that requires us to boot back into the BIOS, so we're just going to have to force power off this thing because I don't even really know where. I mean, I guess I could hit the X and then try to find the do you want to shut down, you know, menu that comes up and just say yes, but regardless, we'll boot back up and press escape to get back to the UEFI menu here, and we're going to go into Device Manager, Rockchip Platform Configuration, Display, and there's this option under Rotation to change it from 90 degrees to 0 degrees. Basically what was happening is it was like the menu that we're in right now, this is at 90 degrees because the default like orientation for this thing is the tablet rotated like this with the camera to the right side. That is 0 degrees. So the 90 degrees is this, what we're set to right now. For whatever reason, when we boot into the Windows installer, it defaults to like the portrait 0 degree orientation, but because I guess it's forcing it as 90 degrees, it doesn't display anything properly. But if we set this to 0 degrees, everything shows up just fine. Now, I did see this option up here under preferred mode. You can change this from native to one of these resolution options, and I thought, oh, we could do like 800 by 600, and then, you know, hopefully that would like have us be able to go through the setup in landscape mode. However, when I did that and then tried to boot back up, the screen would turn on, but nothing would display, and this power light here on the left side would just continue flashing rapidly. And I couldn't figure out a solution to that. I thought that I had bricked the tablet, but fortunately I was still able to remove the SD card and boot into FydeOS. That worked fine. And then when I plugged the SD card back into my computer and rewrote the UEFI image to it, I was able to then get back in here, kind of just reset everything back to the default settings. So we're not going to mess with this, but we are going to change it to 0 degrees for the rotation. We will save those changes and then get out of here and continue. And we have to press enter to reboot since we made changes. And now everything, even the little boot up menu, is going to be in portrait orientation. So we're going to have to rotate the tablet like this, and I'm going to have to rearrange everything on the desk. And boom, there we go. So we're all set. Now, there is a way I was reading to like dual boot Windows 11 with FydeOS, but just to keep things simple, we're going to go with just a full-fledged Windows 11 install and wipe the hard drive in here because, you know, I can always restore it back to FydeOS at a later date. Well, that's certainly a problem. It doesn't seem to recognize the internal hard disk because these partitions are both on disk 0, which just looks to be the USB drive that we're booted off of right now. In fact, you can see it says Windows 11 cannot be installed on disk 0, partition 1 and 2. And I guarantee you it's going to say cannot support drives connected to a USB port, which that's a problem because really it can't install the drives connected to a USB port because I was hoping I could just connect, you know, an external hard drive. Because, yeah, like, we don't have the internal drive as an option here. Let's try to refresh, maybe, and no. We could load a driver, but I don't have a driver to load. The install guide doesn't make any mention of it. Let's see what shows up if we click Browse. So, we've got 3 drives. This right here is, yeah, that's the boot drive, you know, the USB, then UEFI, and then boot D. This is like the RAM disk that it made. So yeah, it just doesn't even recognize the internal drive. That is quite a problem. Now, I did email my contact at Fyde when I was having trouble getting the installer to boot here, just asking if, you know, there were any tips or maybe something that I was missing. I have not heard back yet. So maybe when I do hear back, we'll have a solution for this. But in the meantime, I just feel like we should try a USB drive anyway. I mean, I've got this, you know, hard drive adapter here. We could totally just install it onto this external drive. The problem is we currently have this USB 2.0 adapter, if I can grab it here. This USB 2.0 adapter plugged in, which, I mean, using a USB 2.0 port is going to be miserable, and that's probably why it just says it doesn't recognize it. But, you know, with there only being one USB-C port on this, I'd have to get, like, a dongle. Or I wonder, do you think I could use this and then, like, connect the USB 2.0 hub to this to boot off of it, and then also plug in the you know, USB drive, or not the USB drive, but the, well, this is a show up as a USB drive, but the SATA to USB adapter. Let me just right now, just for the heck of it, let me plug this in and then connect this up to the last USB 2.0 port on the hub, and then we will turn this on. Oh, it shows up. Holy cow. But it says it can't be installed, and it's gonna say that's because, yeah, it's a USB or IEEE 1394. But I just have a feeling that's because it's USB 2. I think if we were using, you know, a USB-C adapter, maybe it would allow us to install it. Okay, well, what we're gonna do regardless is power this off, and let me try. This is gonna be a total mess of adapters here, and if this actually works, that would be quite incredible. But what we're gonna do is, first off, let me just power off the drive here so we don't have that running. Oh, it's still, let me wait for the tablet to fully power off before I unplug anything. Okay, so here's the plan, and if this works, this would be hilarious. So we're going to unplug the USB 2.0 hub. We're going to plug in our Ugreen USB-C dongle here, and then we're going to plug the USB 2.0 hub into, I guess we can disconnect this and just plug it in directly through USB. So, or, you know, USB-A. So we'll do that. Then we'll take the hard drive. I'm actually just going to grab a USB-C to USB-C cable because this adapter does utilize USB-C. So we'll just plug that in here. We'll plug this end into the USB-C port on the side of this thing. And I don't know, let's just see if that works without connecting this thing to power, but I have a feeling that we're going to need to connect it to power. So it should at this point just boot, and we should be getting lights on here, but we don't. So that's not a good sign, and it just is restarting again. Okay. And yeah, we just boot into the setup utility, so it's not finding a bootable partition. So let's give this thing some power. Okay, so FydeTab power adapter plugged in. We get the lights on there. This thing, yeah, it should just automatically come on now that it's got, you know, just like we plugged it into the wall. And we're still not getting lights on here. Oh, man, okay. That's annoying. I don't know. Do you want to try this USB-C dongle here and then connect the hub, you know, up to that like we had before? I don't know. It's worth a try, I guess. I'm willing to do anything at this point. Nope. That ain't gonna work either. And we don't have any lights on here. See, what happens is, if we were to connect this up directly to here, like we had before, you see now, even before powering it off, we get these lights here. Like, this is being recognized by this device, it's getting power, it's working. That does not happen when we have it plugged into here. So, I was thinking this was gonna work as like a USB-C splitter, but maybe it's a little bit too complicated for that because it's got all these other ports and stuff on it, and it just doesn't, you know, split the signal between like these two USB-C ports here and all these other ones. It also seems like it needs to be powered if it can't get power from the USB-C port that it's plugged into, because when we just have this plugged in and the power removed, we just get nothing. And as you saw, that doesn't change anything either. So, okay. Oh my gosh, guys, I got this to work, and you're never gonna believe how I did it. With a sponsored product that I just talked about earlier. Yeah, I think what we have here is a situation of something being too fast, because this USB-C hub, the USB-A ports on it, only, you know, read and write at 10 gigabits per second, whereas this one here has a couple USB-A ports that work at 5 gigabits per second. There are some 10 gigabit per second ones on the front. So what I did is I plugged this hub into one of the 5 gigabits per second ports, and then, you know, connected up the drive here, which I'm going to power that on. That I just wired in directly to USB-C, actually right here on the front, and then connected this to the Fide tab. And yeah, we're going to go through here. We've got the mouse and the keyboard connected, and let's see if this drive now shows up. Oh, I gotta plug the drive in. That would help. Okay, so that's the 500 gig drive, and it still says it can't be installed on it. Okay, well, I got some good news and some bad news. The good news is, after much troubleshooting, I was successfully able to get Windows 11 to boot on this tablet. The bad news? It's booting from a USB drive. I still cannot get the Windows installer to recognize the FydeTab Duo's internal hard drive, and from what I've seen in talking to the FydeOS people, it sounds like there's nothing at this point that I can really do to get it to recognize the internal hard drive, because after speaking with my contact over there, and I want to thank Alpha for really helping me out with this portion of the video, what I have to do is go through the Windows on Raspberry imager provided by the Windows on R project. And apparently they are going to be updating the guide on the FydeTab Duo wiki to better walk you through this process. But you have to download the Windows on Raspberry imager, and then the War project here has a guide for installing on Rockchip devices. Now, the first portion of this is going through and flashing the device with a UEFI firmware image. That's something we don't have to do because we already have that flash to the SD card. We have that in the FydeTab, and as you've seen, we've been able to boot into the UEFI firmware to change our settings around and stuff. So we can scroll all the way down here to the Windows on ARM image, and it tells you to grab the Windows on Raspberry imager, which I've already done, and this is what it looks like. And although it's named Windows on Raspberry, you can use this with Rockchip devices. They literally tell you right here, ignore the name, we'll change it in the next version. So yeah, but what you do is you would, plug in your USB drive, and they tell you to select Raspberry Pi 3 as the device type. It'll install some third-party drivers and boot files, but those don't have any effects on the other boards. So yeah, we would go through here, select English, show all the options for the wizard mode, that's fine, and then we go through here and select our drive. I've got another one in here. I already have this thing burned, but we'll just use this as an example. And you select Raspberry Pi 3. Now, there is a little bit of an issue here, because if you remember from earlier in the video when I was talking about how there is a maximum version of Windows 11 that's supported by the Raspberry Pi 3, and I believe the 4 as well, that is much older than the version of Windows 11 that we've downloaded, which is, as of this video anyways, the latest release. So when we go in here and select this ISO image, it'll mount it, and then error out saying it's not supported because the max build is 25163. Now, the interesting thing is the guide here doesn't make any mention of this, but what you have to do is customize the INI file. Now, they do have a guide that shows you how to do this, and they have all these different things that you can add, but the one that we're interested in is skip edition build num check, and you want to set this to true, and that just bypasses the thing where it's checking to make sure that the version of Windows you've selected is actually supported by the board. Because since we're using this for a Rockchip device, we can use the latest version of Windows 11 just fine. It's totally supported. So we got to close out of this, go in here, and then double click on the settings.ini file, and then just copy this string of text here, and then set that equal to 1. We'll save that, and then go back into the exe file, and then we can run through this. Select our drive, select Raspberry Pi 3, next, and now when we go here and choose our ISO, it will not error out. And we can choose Home or Pro. I think I actually went with Home for this, not that it really matters at this point. Now, I just selected use the latest package available on the server for the drivers, which I imagine will install a bunch of drivers for the Raspberry Pi 3, and since we're not on that, it's kind of going to be redundant. However, I was able to get a Rockchip driver package. I'll link that down below as well for anybody who happens to be doing this. I know I'm kind of walking you through this like it's a tutorial. It's kind of my instinct at this point. I don't ever intend for that to be, because I know this is not something that a lot of people are probably going to be doing, but it just kind of happens naturally. So yeah, we're just going to manually install it later once we have Windows 11 booted on the thing. And then we can use the latest UEFI firmware. That's fine. And then yeah, you can change some options here. I just left all this as default, and then you just would click on next, and it would go through, or actually you would get to this like finalization screen here where it tells you what it's doing, and then you would click install and go through everything, and it works. However, another notable thing is you can also just go through Rufus and change the standard Windows installation under image option to Windows to go. That will also make a portable Windows image on a USB drive, and I got this to boot on the tablet as well. But since the FydeOS people recommended me to just use the Windows on our Raspberry Pi imager, that's the route I went with for this video. So let's swap back over to the Fyde tab and see how this all works. So I am using a USB 3 drive plugged into the fastest port on this thing, and we of course have our keyboard and mouse plugged in there, and we're going to plug the USB-C cable from the dock into the tablet. And this should just power on because it's getting power from the thing now. So there we go. And oh yeah, we got to put the, wait, is the SD card? Oh yeah, the SD card popped itself back in, or I guess I pushed it at some point. So yeah, it's booting into FydeOS right now. Let me just quickly pop that out. That's the other kind of annoying thing about this, is you have to have this bracket just protruding like that to be able to boot into the UEFI firmware. There we go, that's a lot better. So it should just find the USB drive. It's not finding the USB drive. Alright, hang on a second. Alright, well that just took me unplugging everything and plugging it back in and turning it back on, and then it decided to work. And by the way, I do still need to have this plugged in with the keyboard and mouse plugged into it to actually be able to utilize that. It still needs to be powered from this USB hub. It can't work just plugged into the whole USB-C dock that we've been using. But anyway, so here we are in the out-of-box experience, and we're going to go and select US for our region. And yeah, just go set this whole thing up, like we're going through a regular Windows install. From this point, it's really nothing special. No, we're not going to add a second keyboard layout. I'm noticing the keyboard light is not on the USB hub. I don't, yeah, that's kind of interesting. The keyboard is not, like the caps lock key here is not lighting up when I'm pressing it. But the mouse works. And you can see here it is asking us to connect to a network, and it wants us to install a driver, which, wow, do we actually? Really? You mean to tell me if you don't have a network driver, you can't just go through the setup? I mean, well, there is a way to bypass this. You have to open up command prompt and type a command. But really, like, they make you install a driver. That is really stupid. Like, seriously. And, well, since we don't have the keyboard working, we can't press Shift F10 to get to the command prompt. I wonder if, can we use the, I hope we can we use the keyboard case here? Let me connect this up. Is this going to work without a driver? No, it's not. It's not gonna work. I'm moving around on the trackpad right now. Like, this is ridiculous. I didn't even think that, like, this would be a thing, but they literally, you have to have a network adapter with a driver installed to be able to go through the setup. Again, there is a way to bypass it, but it requires you having a keyboard plugged in, you know, so you can type a command in command prompt, and I don't think there's a way to get an on-screen. All right, what is this down here? Yeah, I think those are like accessibility icons, or maybe not. I mean, that's like a sound icon, and that looks like the accessibility icon, but I can't click on it. I was able to, and yeah, spoiler alert, I did go through Rufus and did the Windows to Go thing from there, and that gives you the option, just like it does when you're making a regular bootable USB drive, to, you know, bypass the like online account requirement and all that other stuff. So I was able to get through this process on that, and I didn't even really pay attention to the fact if the keyboard was being recognized. But yeah, it's straight up just not like working. I wonder, could I plug this directly into the thing? To the front? I mean, I tried this before and it didn't work. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, now that's turning on. Okay. So, maybe we don't need... Okay. now I'm curious, because I just said that we need to have the USB 2.0 hub for the keyboard and mouse to work. No, we don't. Okay. I promise you, this was not working before. When I had the keyboard and mouse plugged in directly to the dock, it did not work. Now it's working. The mouse works great. Okay, so we don't need this. We can set that aside. Now we can press Shift F10, open up the command prompt, and oh gosh, what's the command? It's OOBE / bypass NRO. And then it's just got a reload setup, and we should be able to get through this without any problems now. But one of the things that doesn't work is the network adapter. That is not mentioned in that list of supported devices. I'm gonna see if that driver pack we downloaded, maybe if there's a driver in there we could use, but that's not specific to the FydeTab Duo. It's just for Rockchip devices. I don't know what network adapter they have in here specifically. At least offhand, you can just look it up since this whole thing is open source. But yeah, so we'll go through here again, select US. Now it shouldn't complain about the network. And there we go. I don't have internet. Why that's not an option by default is freaking insane to me, but that's Microsoft for you. But yeah, as you've been able to tell, this is definitely not something you can just do on a whim with this tablet. Even if we go through this setup and we're able to get like the drivers for the keyboard case to work properly, you still need to have a powered USB hub to be able to boot off of the USB drive. Just plugging that USB drive in through like this dongle right here, it just doesn't recognize it. Just a moment. We'll give it a moment. And here we are on the desktop. So, looking good, other than the fact that everything is ridiculously small. So we're going to open up display properties and see if we can not only change this thing to landscape orientation, but see if we can adjust the resolution or the scaling a little bit. So we'll do show more options, wait for that context menu to load. Thank you, Windows. With this thing running off of a USB drive, we are going to just have to deal with slower performance than you would get with an internal drive. But, I mean, I tried to make it as fast as I possibly could with it being a USB 3 drive plugged into a USB 3 port. We can't actually change the resolution. Look at that. What if we change this to landscape? And then, yeah, we still can't change the resolution, but we can change the scaling. So let's up that to like a 200%. Oh my gosh, that looks so much better. Holy cow. Okay, so yeah, here we have Windows 11 running on the FydeTab Duo. Now, what we're going to do immediately is plug in this other USB drive I have. I've got the drivers on here, and we also have a couple of ARM64 programs that we can run. So we'll kind of see how that all manages. So let me plug this into the hub here. Hopefully it gets recognized. There we go. It showed up. And this is interesting. So we have a C drive, and then we've got this CD drive, NIC driver installer. What is this? I guess that's something that the Raspberry Pi imager put on here, because this is the USB drive, and I've got the driver cab file there. But yeah, I'm curious, let's just run this and see. I mean, this is probably going to be for the Raspberry Pi, so it's not going to really do anything here. We're also running in test mode, interestingly enough. I just noticed that. But yeah, it's from Realtek. I don't know, let's just run through it, see if maybe they use the same network adapter in here. Oh, well that just crashed. Well, I guess we'll go in and try that again. Oh, and now it's gone. What? Okay, well I guess that was some temporary thing that it loaded. we'll just move right along and go into our G drive here. And I do have this notes thing because you do have to run a command to install this cab file. You can see kind of how slow things are opening up, and oh my gosh, look at that. Look at that window, like you move it around. Let's see if we can, oh my gosh, yeah, look at the window snapping, how delayed that is. So, yeah, judging from what I've seen so far, Windows 11's probably not going to give you the best experience on this thing. Not that I was expecting that going into it. So, we need to just open up an elevated command prompt, and then we have to run a dism command, right? If doing it from the device itself. Oh no, we got to run this. Okay, so path to drivers.inf. Yeah, okay. So we'll copy this, paste it here, and then it's in the G drive. So we'll do that. Oh, that's great. Total driver package is 0. Added driver package is 0. What the? Wait. Yeah, this isn't an INF. This is a cab file. So yeah, we'll just, I don't know, copy this stuff out of here. Paste it there, and then run this again. There we go. Okay, so we added one driver package. And before we restart, let's see down here if, I mean, we know we don't have any network working, but do we have sound? And it doesn't seem like it, because we should be, well, I mean, let me go to just like run here and just type in some gibberish. Nope, yeah, we don't got sound working. We have, you know, the like volume slider. Oh no, it just goes back down to minimum. Yeah, so it's just not recognizing anything. Let me run device manager. Oh my gosh, look at all those unknown devices. Jeez. Okay. So, hey, well, it found one of them is a network controller. Then we have all these unknown devices. So what do we have? Audio inputs. Oh, it's, okay, speakers, Raspberry Pi audio. Yeah, so it's got the wrong thing installed. And then disk drives, yeah, we got all that. Keyboards, it's got our keyboard and mouse. Monitor just says generic monitor. Network adapters. Okay, Realtek Gaming USB 2.5. I guess this is what we, maybe we did install that because that was a Realtek driver. Maybe just installed it like silently and then just ejected whatever image that was. It says it's working properly. Now we do have an Ethernet port on the back of our Ugreen dock here, so I mean we could just try that and see if that maybe works, but I mean I'm sure this is just for the Raspberry Pi. And that's why it's interesting to me that the War project does not specify on the Rockchip like installation guide that you're supposed to, when the installer asks you like what driver pack do you want to use, it doesn't tell you to pick it from there, because when you go to download this driver pack, which is from them, it's just on their GitHub page, there's these separate install instructions, you know, for doing it off the device or on the device, and I just wanted to follow along with that since, you know, that's what it tells you to do. So that's what we've done here. Let me just go ahead and restart and see if maybe, you know, it's able to detect any new hardware. I just want to see what adapters that it shows in here, which I mean, it should show the one that's in Device Manager. Or maybe not. No, this folder is empty. Well, that's hilarious. Okay. Oh, it did uninstall. Look at that. Yeah, okay. But yeah, we have this network controller in here, which is probably the wireless. It detects it as a network adapter, but we don't have the driver for it. Well, that's unfortunate. So, under processors, we've got, yeah, all the Rockchip. Let's actually open up Task Manager. I kind of want to see how the system is doing right now. And I do have a couple other things copied over to that USB drive that we can run. I've got Geekbench and I have a game. So yeah, we'll see how well that it handles all that. So it looks like just, I mean, we do have all this stuff open, but we're using 32% memory, 8, 12%, 11% CPU. I think we have 8 gigs of RAM, right? We've got 8 cores, 8 threads for the CPU, and we do have 8 gigs of RAM. And then our USB drive is, yeah, graph has come down, but it was using a fair amount of disk usage there when we were opening up Windows and stuff. Makes sense. And yeah, I guess we can just leave this. I'm going to go ahead and kind of shrink this down, move it over here just so you can see these throughout the video. And let me hop into File Explorer. And oh, look at that. There's the Realtek thing again. So I guess this is something that just comes with this image and it just mounts it, and you have to like install it and run this every single time you boot the system. And then it installs that driver, unmounts itself, So Explorer did not crash last time. I mean, it did close. Nothing really went wrong, because if we go back into Device Manager, now we should have, under Network Adapters, yep, there it is, Gaming USB 2.5 Gigabit Ethernet Family Controller. Well, now I have to know. This probably is not going to work, but let's plug in the Ethernet cable to there. Oh my gosh, it's identifying. Holy cow. Okay, this actually is going to work. We're on the network. Holy cow. I didn't think this was going to work. You are kidding me. That's the right driver for this thing? Alright, well, I hate to be the one to ruin the fun, but that whole thing you just saw is not as impressive as I initially thought it was, because, as it turns out, when you plug this dock into a Windows system, it mounts a CDFS drive with that Realtek driver on it, so that you can utilize the dock's Ethernet port on the back. Now, this does not happen when you plug it into a Mac OS system, and that's how I've been using it, so I just didn't experience this until I did it with the FydeTab. But as I was editing this video, I was like, you know, I wonder if maybe the driver just comes on the Ugreen dock, and well, that's exactly what it does. So yeah, unfortunately, not as impressive as I initially thought, but in the end, we got the FydeTab Duo online, so I guess that's something. Like I was saying, I do want to go in here. I've got Geekbench and SuperTux cart, so we're going to run Geekbench here. Oh yeah, and because this isn't the Pro version, it requires an internet connection to work and upload the benchmark results. Fortunately, that's not a problem anymore. I didn't actually think of that, but yeah, to do offline stuff, you have to use Geekbench 6 Pro. Anyway, so we got CPU and GPU. We're going to run the CPU benchmark first. I imagine this is going to take a little while, maybe substantially more than a little while. And here are the results. Now, the benchmark didn't take that long to do, but I had to run it 3 times because I've noticed, as you can see, we're not on the internet anymore. For whatever reason, this thing keeps disconnecting us from the internet. I'm not really sure if that's it could be related to the driver or something, but it's not because of the fact that, like, the computer's going to sleep and it's putting the network adapter to sleep, because I turned that setting off in Device Manager. So I have to just unplug the Ethernet cable and plug it back in, and then it reconnects to the network. So the test kept failing because I was walking away, just letting it do its thing, and I came back and it just said, oh, it couldn't upload the results. Well, here's the results now, if you were curious. And yeah, I wonder how many tests on Geekbench were made on a FydeTab Duo running Windows 11. And I imagine this is one of the few. I mean, I'm sure, well, maybe the FydeTab people themselves have run Windows on it and just done tests. But yeah, so that's that. And last but not least, I do want to run that game that I have copied over to the drive. So we'll go ahead and install that. I don't think we've taken a look at SuperTux cart on this channel, but there is an ARM64 version of it, so I figured why the heck not. Oh, and if you're wondering why I didn't do the GPU test in Geekbench, well, I tried to do it, but it just kept crashing every single time. And I mean, again, we don't have the proper graphics driver installed. We aren't using any sort of graphics acceleration. So even if it did run, the results are going to be pretty poor. And I suspect, I mean, that's probably why it's even failing to run in the first place. SuperTux card here will definitely test out the graphics capabilities. Although I'm actually not really sure how resource intensive this game is. All I know is it's a racing game. So let's go ahead and get this installed and see what it's all about. Oh, and let me just bring up Task Manager so you can see the poor USB drive just maxed out at 100% disk usage. And yeah, I mean, check out how long it's taken to extract this, holy cow. But here is your average write speed. It's definitely highly variable. We're jumping from a few hundred kilobytes to, you know, the like 10 megabytes. There's 479 kilobytes per second. All right, finish, and let's just see if we can launch this thing. We'll go ahead and minimize Task Manager. It should have made a shortcut here in the start menu. Well, it's under recommended, that's fine. So let's run SuperTux cart 1.4. My prediction is this is going to be pretty unbearable. Your graphics driver appears to be very old, yeah. Sounds about right. It recommends a driver supporting OpenGL 3.3 or better. The game will likely still run, but in reduced graphics mode. No, I'm not going to play the tutorial. I'm going to try and just figure it out, because that sounds like a really good idea. So we go to single player. Of course, we're going to choose Tux. You know, that sounds like, that sounds pretty on brand. And what do we got? Game mode, normal race. We have a time trial, follow the leader, battle, and soccer. Oh, and there's even more. Egg hunt. Oh my gosh, look at all these. Oh, okay, we just wrapped around, never mind. So we got, what, lap trial. We're gonna do normal race, and I am gonna say novice because I've never played this particular racing game before, though I imagine it's gonna be similar to like your Mario Karts or Diddy Kong Racing. Snow Peak, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Start race. I guess it's just, yeah, it's picking a bunch of CPUs for us, and oh, check out that frame rate. So what are the controls? You know, maybe I should have done the tutorial. WASD or arrow keys. Oh, don't accelerate before set. Okay. So, well, at least I was pressing the right key for acceleration. Or maybe I wasn't. No, I was not pressing the right key. It was just... Oh, wait a second. Oh, I was. Okay. Well, it's the arrow key. And, yeah, I don't know what frame rate we're getting, but it's not very good. This is not fun at all. What, like, graphic settings do we have? We are at 1024 by 768, custom settings, animated characters, we can turn that off, particle effects, definitely turn that way off, rendered image quality, very low, geometry detail, disabled. We have to restart to apply new settings. I guess all these options are just disabled since, you know, we are not running with like a supported or I guess recommended video driver. So this is the best performance that we're gonna get. And we're also running at a pretty low resolution too. So as you can see, still pretty laggy for sure. So I gotta wait for set to start accelerating. So now I can start accelerating. And oh my, yeah, this is pretty bad. Which again, that's what I was expecting. But, you know, it's always good to confirm your suspicions, am I right? So yeah, here's a Super Tux Kart, definitely a great introduction to this game. I definitely want to revisit this on the channel at some point on a system where it can actually run and be playable, because this is pretty unplayable, not gonna lie. So yeah, we'll just try to run this guy off the road, and I think we will call it quits there. That, my friends, is trying to install Windows 11 on the FydeTab Duo. I think this qualifies as a but everything went wrong video because, well, we had a lot of things go wrong, and I didn't actually get Windows 11 to be installed on the FydeTab. It's running on it, but it's running from a USB drive. Again, not the internal hard drive, which definitely kind of sucks and does impact performance. But we got it running. This is something that I definitely would not recommend you do. I think the FydeTab Duo is far better off running FydeOS, or maybe one of the other Linux distros that they have guides available for on the wiki page. But there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, get subscribed, maybe consider becoming a patron or a channel member to get early access, sponsor-free access to these videos before anybody else. But either way, I just want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.